There's been a lot of talk lately, lots and lots of yapping on college campuses around the country. There's been a lot of talk about the encampments, lots of talk about trying to protest, lots of talk about trying to push universities to divest. Well, my friends, I will say this is I know a little bit about it because I used to be there too. Let's take you back to 2019, 5 years ago. So, in other words, a really, really freaking long time ago because 5 years. You know how time is, yeah. I was 21 years old, coming off the heels of studying abroad in Jordan, and I decided to join a committee. That's right, that's right. I joined a committee. I joined a committee with all the other university campuses in my state university system because I thought, yeah, I could be the student perspective. I thought I could really represent maybe what a lot of students around me were saying, right? There were a lot of students at the time, even 5 years ago, that were talking about cutting study abroad programming to Israel. This was a big issue for me. I'm Palestinian. A lot of other Palestinians have been asking for it. So I go to this meeting. Damn, did I get walloped. I got cooked. Just completely cooked. I was way out of my depth, way out of my league. You had 5 other administrators there, and the chancellor of a major university in that state system, and did not go so well. Did not go so well at all. Now, why am I telling you this? Why am I saying all this? The yapping is because of this. The problem that I've been seeing lately with some universities is that there's been a lot of yapping, a lot of negotiating, and in some cases, concessions that were made with the expectation that the university will honor them. Now, I'm not a higher education expert, but I do know something about one state university system very well. In my time as a student, as an activist, advocate, whatever you want to call me. I don't really like to call myself an activist necessarily. I'll just call myself an advocate for the time being. The UC system, the University of California. Now, the University of California, you see, it's a state university system, right? Right? And we tell ourselves, yeah, like they're cooking, it's the UCs. The UCs have this really great international reputation, right? Leading on research, leading in the sciences, leading in all these innovations that we hear about, right? But in order to interrogate divestment, the strategizing that's going on around it, and why negotiations with universities like these might not be in our best interest, you have to first peel back the layers. You know what I'm saying? Got to peel it back. You got to peel this back all the way from the top. And we have to go back through history to understand why negotiations with the UC ultimately, in my view, is a failed strategy. Now, go back to the beginning. In the 1860s, in the midst of the Civil War, right? So this is 150 years ago, we had the establishment of the state university systems that we now know that exist today. There was a law passed in 1862 known as the Morrill Land Grant Act. The Morrill Land Grant Act. Now, what does this law do? Right. This law was created as a way to establish agricultural colleges in the lands that were expropriated or taken away. I'm not going to use the word expropriation. I feel like that's a big word there. I'll just say this. The universities were founded on stolen land. Literally. So these legislators established universities around the country through land parcels, right, that were given out like candy to various states to establish agricultural colleges on lands that were seized from treaties that were illegitimate to native tribes or from treaties that we broke as Americans. That led to the establishment of the University of California in 1865 with the establishment of what is now UC Berkeley. The rest of the state university systems, the rest of the state universities, UC Riverside, for example, my alma mater, existed as an offsite, an agricultural research facility that was founded more than 100 years ago in what was known then as an agricultural research facility. UC Santa Barbara was a Cal State University at first before becoming a UC. UCLA was an auxiliary of UC Berkeley before becoming a full university in our UC system. Irvine, Santa Barbara, and San Diego, Davis, they all were offshoots of this original outgrowth at UC Berkeley, which itself was founded on stolen land. Hence, right, when we talk about negotiations, we talk about negotiating directly with the University of California. You have to understand something. These schools were themselves founded on illegitimate claims of land that was given to them that wasn't theirs. And when you want to understand Palestinians, right, we want to understand the issue that's going on with Palestinians today. We're fighting against the same settler colonialism that is still being done in the natives of this land, and many other nations that have been decimated by the establishment of our state university system and university systems across the country. So that's that. Now, at many schools around the country, some schools, not all schools, right, we're seeing this push, this really, with good intention, right? There's this push to give people scholarships to Gaza. This is one of the concessions you're hearing a lot about these days, or the establishment of a resource center for students from my descent, Middle Eastern Americans. You're hearing talk of various buildings that people would like to rename in the honor of martyrs, Palestinian martyrs like Shireen Abu Akleh, who was a journalist shot dead in the West Bank by Israel, right? Various other martyrs that we have, venerable martyrs. Now, is it not venerable to educate our youth, to educate people from Gaza? It's a venerable and honorable thing. However, do not let this distract you, my friends. And I'm going to connect it all. I'm going to connect this all like a thread for you. So we talked already, right, about how the University of California and mother state university systems that we're negotiating with are founded themselves on illegitimate claims from land expropriation, right? We talk about the fact that there are people out there trying to push for diversity, right? Trying to establish these resource centers, establish these scholarships, establish the renaming of buildings, establishing departments for our students. You can see how the line will connect. You see, because these universities are themselves founded on stolen land and and false claims, it connects right into the reality of vapid, performative, and ultimately meaningless work. You see, universities in America work like this. I'm not a higher education administrator. I'm not a PhD, right? But I will say this, though, being around the block. My school, and some other schools in California, pride themselves on the study of ethnic studies, right? We have this thing called ethnic studies. It's about studying the various struggles of various ethnic groups in America. The Chicano movement, the Asian American movement, South Asian Americans, Arab Americans. We can talk about this, we can yap about this probably from now until the cow goes home, right? But here's the thing, right? We have all these, wonderful people out there in the faculties of these leading universities. They're yapping good game about caring about, they yap a good game, about how, we really care about fighting against injustice. We care so much about fighting against for the colonized, right? The native people. There's all this energy, all this passion. And that same passion is used to then educate the youth of our countries to then do what with exactly? It goes back to this premise we talked about with the land-grant university. The land-grant university's function is to do research to enrich the population of students that go in and grant them upward mobility. But who is being expensed by this? Who's being expensed by the creation and the expansion of these universities? Universities like my alma mater, universities like the other UC schools, the other Cal State schools, the other university systems that exist nationwide, public and private. It's the people who actually have to live on that land, live off the land. The natives, the locals, who themselves don't see the benefits, the fruits of any of that research. You have these research institutions doing extractive work, right? The UC system, for instance, was the one that created the Manhattan Project. That's right. The nuclear bombs that went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki started from the UC system, which itself caused radiation poisoning for natives in New Mexico that we know about because the descendants are still alive today. Not only that, but in Mauna Kea in Hawaii, right? There's a massive fight going on between the indigenous tribes who consider this mountain sacred to them, and the University of California and other university systems are trying to push for the establishment of some telescope on top of a volcano in order to get a near perfect astronomical fluency, right? To see the stars in the heavens with accurate precision. You see, it's for the benefit of research, it's for the benefit of science, it's for the benefit of humanity. But is it really to the benefit of humanity? Is it really to the benefit of people? If the research we're doing, the work we're doing, doesn't translate to any gains in the ground? And this, my friends, ties all the way back. It ties all the way back to our ethnic studies classes, on our ethnic studies departments, and these pushes for more resources for our students and more scholarships for our children. Because how does the upward mobility of a small social class benefit the people of Gaza? How? How exactly? If the universities themselves are built on stolen land, if the universities themselves keep producing research high up in the ivory tower that doesn't see the gains go to the people who lost the most, if the research that we're doing ultimately empowers the weapons manufacturers, empowers through science, through our partnerships, this is such a dark and convoluted web, right? The research that's being done at these universities ultimately are the ones that empower the creation of weapons of great potential that do immense harm to people in Gaza and around the world. If those ties exist, if the university exists for that function, how do you negotiate? How? How is it possible? Now, this is why, and this is my theory, this is my thinking, diversity won't save us. The university system won't save us either. Politics, in the case of divestment, in the case of divesting from weapons manufacturers, divesting from our partnerships with Israel, divesting and boycotting, and performing an academic boycott itself endangers danger to our academic institutions. Hence, direct negotiations will not and cannot work on a university by university system. Instead, it requires an understanding of politics itself. Politics is not about who can make the best argument. You can look at opinion poll after opinion poll after opinion poll after opinion poll. We can talk about this till the day is long. Generally, people below the age of 40 are pretty happy, right? They're pretty happy to support Palestinians, and generally are on our side. Now, unfortunately, power itself corresponds with wealth. And where does that wealth exist? The wealth does not exist with millennials, does not exist with Gen Z. It exists with the X's and the boomers and the silent, the generations after us. And you can yell from the highest rooftop, we can shatter as many windows as we want, But ultimately, trying to convince our oppressors, trying to convince these university systems to quote unquote to do the right thing, to divest, is itself endangering to their profit, to their thrift. Which is why, if you study past movements, past liberatory movements for other oppressed people around the world that originate in universities, such as ending the war in Vietnam and ending the draft in the 1960s, the boycott, investment, and sanctions movements that existed against apartheid South Africa, which is a cause célèbre. It's a favorite tool that activists go to when they compare these protests to the ones in the 1980s. There's one thing that activists today, in my view, miss about those movements. It was this. They knew then, as we should know now, that negotiations themselves will never work. You instead must force the table to be flipped, not to add more student chairs to the table. No matter how many Palestinian faces we have in high places, no matter how many African Americans you have in high places, no matter how many Asian Americans, Latino Americans, any kind of Americans you put at those tables, as is the case in the UC system, the president of the University of California is a black man. Now, he is a Zionist, an avowed Zionist. He is a committed arch Zionist, as is many of the regents who are themselves diverse in their backgrounds. Do you really think their interests are opposed to your interest? So you must instead, my friends, take direct action against the university and target them in ways that I can't say on this camera and I can't say in this video because I don't want to get charged with some kind of conspiracy. But if you go back and look at those movements, all I will say is this. The radical talk by your ethnic studies professors, the radical talk you hear on the streets and on social media, the radical talk you might hear on TikTok, and the radical thinking that people have in their heads, it's time to get that into praxis and get out of those rooms as fast as possible. Because that's the only way we can not just liberate our minds, but help to liberate Palestine. Thank you.